Welcome to the Korea Pro podcast. I'm your host, Jeongmin Kim, the Editorial Director of Korea Pro.
And I'm John Lee, the editor of Korea Pro.
Join us for a weekly 15-minute conversation as we dive into the most pressing stories shaping South Korea and dissect the most complicated ones for you.
From politics to culture, technology to society, we've got you covered. So stay ahead of the curve and never be sidelined again.
So get ready for a fresh perspective on South Korea's news. This is the Korea Pro podcast. John is off today, so I'm joined today with two other members of Korea Pro, Lina Park and Joon. Park, hello.
Hello, it's good to be here.
Hi.
We will be talking about one domestic politics story and one social issues related topic, and then week ahead will involve some of the main things that's coming up next week that our clients might want to keep their eyes on. Let's start with the biggest domestic politics news this week that kicked off the week, actually. Party merger. There were four different, very similarly named, honestly, very shadily named minor parties led by six former Democratic Party members, one former PPP, People Power Party member, not member, he wasn't elected, but just member, and one former Justice Party. And it's now they have taken the name of Lee Jun-seok's party, which is 개혁신당, New Reform Party, I guess.
That's correct, yes.
And Lee Jun-seok, while Lee Jun-seok is leading it, Lee Nak-yon, they're sort of like a co-chairman sort of thing, right? Yeah. It's quite fascinating to see this as someone who voted for past election multiple times, because these four parties of 9 people, they don't mix very well. It's really awkward to see all of them in one photo, especially very feminist Ryu Ho-jung of Justice Party, a very unconventional party member as well in the past, and Lee Jun-seok, who is Lee Jun-seok, who is the opposite of Ryu Ho-jung, really, and Lee Nak-yon, who's like an elder sort of figure in South Korean politics. Joon, just very quickly, who is Ryu Ho-jung and Lee Jun-seok?
Well, she's a 31-year-old, Ryu Ho-jung. She was the youngest National Assembly lawmaker who was elected to represent the Justice Party in 2020, and she's been known to advocate for women's rights and has been a very avid feminist. Building on the feminist narrative, shifted perspectives on gender as well during her time in the Justice Party. She recently left the Justice Party last year to join the party merger and recently joined ranks with Lee Jun-seok, as you just mentioned, a known advocate for voicing the inequalities of men in South Korean society. Now, for Lee Jun-seok, in that case, he also was elected as elected as the youngest ever leader of the ruling party.
Elected by party
members.
So he's never been elected to district or proportional actual lawmaker seat, but he was chosen as a party leader during Yoon Suk-yeol campaign, right?
And he became the youngest ever leader of the ruling party in 2021 at the age of 36, but was ousted from the role in 2022.
Why was that?
Over allegations of sexual bribery and an attempted cover-up. So he left the party in December last year. He created his own New Reform Party, as you just stated.
After giving Yoon like a December 27th deadline saying he should change.
Absolutely,
what? I think he just really wanted to leave and just make that moral justification.
Just say it.
Yeah, creating a new party.
He's been a vocal critic of Yoon's policies. So.
And of course, before merger, one of his first pledges was to mandate women who want to serve certain public service posts to go to the military. And that's not surprising that he came up with that. And that's why it's very awkward to see Ryu Ho-jung and Lee Jun-seok in one photo. And what about Lee Nak-yon?
Lee Nak-yon was a former ROK prime minister. He's serving one of the longest terms ever during the Moon administration.
And also former party leader.
Yes, that's true. However, the support that originally was for him from supporters of the Moon administration kind of waned during his fluctuating performances as party leader for the Democratic Party, and also diminished after his loss to Lee Jae-myung in the presidential primaries.
Which was actually quite surprising at the time to see.
That's very true. And he's taken a year-long hiatus in the U.S., and he came back and left the DP in January. And I quote that he said that it was a one-man party and a bulletproof party where violent and low-class speech conduct are rampant.
He also claimed that majority of Democratic Party members are criminals. But to be fair, majority of the National Assembly members do have certain crime
That's
record.
very true. Yeah.
But also partly it's because they went through democratic movement as well.
That's true.
During
yes.
the authoritarian regime and dictatorships. Just moving on, the rest are like Kim Tae-sap and others are also interesting, but for the sake of time, they are all the defectors from the Democratic Party. It seems like their main primary goal for a merger is to aim at the young swing voters.
That's true.
Being a young generation ourselves, have you talked to your friends about that? What did they say?
Well, honestly, I don't believe much has changed for my friends. I think most of them are still very much disheartened by the strong and, quite frankly, immature rhetoric that's coming out from the two political parties being tossed around from party to party by the day. And they've waned attention to politics as a whole, turning off their screens. The entrance of a merger party like this, with the same familiar faces, doesn't seem to project any significant changes for the hopefulness in April.
What about for your friends, Lina?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of confusion among my friends as to what these alliance wants, questioning the merge as well. Quoting Han Dong-un, he described the party merger as a disguised marriage for obtaining some sort of like permanent residency.
You would understand that.
Yeah, yeah. But I do feel a sense of interest, at least like towards a new alliance from some of my friends, because there's also a high level of frustration between towards the two major parties, and so they're kind of feeling this new vibe. I'm pretty sure it's because of the term as well, but there is a sense of urgent and new vibe to break free or be saved from the two-party dominance, at least. Or because the election is coming up.
Right. For my friends who are in early 30s, women in early 30s, they're like, what the hell is progressive parties doing with Lee Jun-seok? But
that's very true.
Right. So they have a long way to go to persuade those types of demographics. But just very quickly, it does look like Lee Nak-yon made a little bit of a concession with the name. But looking at the membership status, it seems like Lee Nak-yon is still leading the campaigning committee, it seems.
So what is he gaining from merging these two parties then?
For Lee Nak-yon?
Yeah.
I think like because he was so unpopular, polls show, I think it's maybe was a strategic negotiation on his end to go with a few younger generation and non-conventional politicians like Yoo Ho-jung and Lee Jun-seok, which would have been a very big decision for him. Something like growing young, like nurturing next generation politicians who are not authoritarian or fandom politics or whatever, sort of like a moral justification maybe for Lee Nak-yon. But I ask you too, what does Lee Jun-seok gain from allying with Lee Nak-yon?
Well, just as I mentioned before, there's a rigid political division between the two parties, and they're coupled with the growth of undecided voters, as you mentioned before, swing voters, and allows him to project his merger party as a centrist alternative. So for Lee Jun-seok, if successful, he could potentially earn a newer political ground with this centrist doctrine, garnering a better support base against the current administration's policies.
He will have to tone down a lot to
very
sound
true.
more centrist. But it does seem like there is an overarching agreement between all of these politicians that they do want to punish the Yoon Suk-yeol administration. And for Lee Jun-seok, maybe it's a little bit of a personal vendetta as well, because PPP sort of just threw him away. Really.
Yeah, so how do you see this unraveling in April then? Will this party live up to what it is promising, or and how many
prediction, seats? You mean, like seats.
Exactly.
It's actually interesting that we have a few polls. Apparently a lot of media was interested in this exact question, so they asked multiple pollsters to see how popular they are. Lee Jun-seok claimed that they will be able to get 6 to 7 seats, but it seems maybe, yes, there is a cutoff percentage in the proportional party vote, which is if you are under 3%, you don't get any proportional seat.
Yes.
On national, it's very complicated. Read my last week's analysis for more. But polls do show that Democratic Party and PPP they sort of tie still around 30%, but 개혁신당, the new reform party, for the first time was included into the survey, the merger one.
That's true.
And many of them are in general 6%, which is not bad.
Yeah.
And also when they're asked about just the proportional vote, 60% say that the government has to be punished, which is sort of in line with what the new reform party and the DP wants.
Yeah.
And though 16% said that both parties are evil and they should be punished as well, which is a good opportunity for the
It definitely is.
reform party. And also, when people are asked just about the proportional seats, 9% for a new reform party, it's very high. And when asked to people in their 30s, people in their 60s, and men in general, new reform party actually gets 2-digit numbers in percentage, which is very, very high. But keep an eye on it. We will see more coming in the coming weeks.
Yeah, but the real question is, why is everyone... What's up with everyone? What's their ultimate goal?
Like the ultimate goal, maybe... I think their moral justification is to break the two-party system, but that's almost impossible in the semi-MMP, the mixed member proportional representation, which I explained in last week's podcast. For I think it's like half and half. One is to get the centrist left voters, although it will be almost impossible for the Democratic Party to get the supermajority again, but still they can sort of prevent that. And getting the centrist right is also part of the agenda, especially for Lee Jun-seok, to make sure that PPP does not want and increase the possibility of a lame duck status for Yoon.
Yes.
Junha and I are working on a story regarding this merger, so check out for more. It will be published on Friday. The second topic is regarding one of the hottest social issues related headlines in South Korea these days, especially after South Korean government and the Seoul city introduced measures to support this, which is egg freezing. This hasn't been something well known to South Korean public, at least in the maybe 5 years before.
Yeah. I've never
really heard about
across.
this. But now, whenever I'm meeting my friends, they always talk about this at least once.
Wow.
And Hyojin Kim, one of our contributing analysts, she wrote about this. It's very informative, and it's also timely considering there are new support measures, which are not enough, but it's maybe a good step forward. For me, this was personally very informative, as I was also personally considering it, and many of my friends are as well, both married and unmarried. What did you think reading it?
For me, I found it quite informative as well. I previously didn't commit as much attention to the egg freezing surge, but the hardships that women face in this country are pretty much paramount, and the mental and physical challenges that come with egg freezing for women in this country is something that I definitely learned from.
Right. Lina?
Yeah, well, first of all, it was surprising to read how many women actually undergo egg freezing procedures. Like the number of women actually going through the procedure doubled, and there were like 1,500, right? But just by looking at Jeongmin and me, who are interested in considering egg freezing, the actual number of women who could undergo the procedure could be much higher.
Right.
Yeah, but I feel conflicted about this topic, though. Like, one, yes, I am glad to see so many women take initiative of their body and take control of their future. But two, it's so damn expensive. It's
expensive and also really detrimental to your health if you don't do it right, because it's a lot of hormonal procedure and everything. I'm seeing my friends go through that. It's actually really detrimental to women's health. But let's start a little bit with a more bigger picture question. Marriage and birth rate in general, whenever there's a networking party with Korea Risk Group clients, this topic almost always comes up at least once. We are all generally MZ in Korea. So, we're buddies speaking here. But we do have a bit of an age gap. And I was just wondering, what do your friends say when you discuss potential childbirth or marriage issues when you talk to them, just on personal levels?
Well, despite having a friend that is married, the current socioeconomic gain that comes from marriage and potential childbirth is outweighed by not pursuing this route. So I've noticed that many of my friends do not have marriage and potential childbirth in their sights for routes in life. They focus mostly on relationships and dating. Just to
brief our listeners a little bit, I am in my early 30s, and our two other members are in mid-20s. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Yes. And Lina?
Yeah, most of my friends are supportive of marriage and childbirth, actually. But maybe it's because we are heading into our late 20s now. But whether through birth or adoption, I think it's still interesting to see how our perceptions shift from as we get older. Like our question has shifted from, oh, do I want a baby? Like, do I like babies?
Right.
To, can I now financially support a child? Like, am I healthy enough to have a baby? So it's just like there's so many factors that are uncontrollable now, and I think that's when the topic of egg freezing comes from too.
Right, and for me and my friends, the am I healthy enough to get a baby is an increasingly salient topic for us because we do feel like our health is deteriorating very quickly after 30. But I just wanted to mention, how accurately do you think media portrays this issue? They mostly paint the entire generation as against marriage or childbirth, but like Lina says, and my experience as well, that's not really true, and it's much more complicated than that.
Yeah, it's definitely more complicated than that because we're now seeing increasingly different types of unconventional types of family as to why 20s and 30s may be seen as going against marriage, maybe that marriage and childbirth isn't simply a priority for young people anymore. Like young people still value marriage and family, but they are delaying or redefining these milestones like due to like variety of factors like economic.
Right.
Yeah. And so also younger generations are also increasingly considering unconventional types of family, childbirth like partnership, like which is
Cohabitation.
Yeah, cohabitation.
Like roommate setup,
yeah,
basically,
cohabitation
right?
without marriage, single parenthood by choice, same-sex partnerships, and blended families. It will take time for legal system to adapt to these changes. But I think overall, family and perceptions towards family is definitely changing because I just looked up a quick data from Statistics Korea, and across all generations, hobbies came first when there was a survey of like how one wants to spend their retirement. Hobbies came first and family came last.
Well, I can vouch for that. But also it's sort of that data, the way of asking that question could have been a little bit distorted because it can come together.
Yeah.
That's very true.
Right, but I think maybe I keep thinking maybe these polls and media headlines are sort of distorting the picture from the start by asking maybe the wrong questions as well. But that's very interesting. And also we saw in recent data just this week that even minors increasingly consider unconventional partnerships as well, and having children without marriage. And Joon, anything you wanted to add?
Just the kind of eye-opening case study we can look at is the Saud case, which was a catalyst for bringing this conversation into the fray. Yes, she's a TV personality, and she revealed that she received a sperm donation to have her first child. And it was known that the current domestic law widely that it makes it illegal for unmarried women and women without spouses to undergo sperm donation and in vitro fertilization. But in reality, a South Korean media outlet confirmed that there was no restriction to this.
Actually, firm restriction. It's more like they said that it's more like a recommendation, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So the current Bioethics Act, Article 24 of the current South Korean jurisdiction, it does not specify whether it is illegal for an unmarried woman to receive a sperm donation, and only writes that there can be legal consent for a spouse for a married woman, which doesn't have a clear basis for those restrictions. And within the bioethics law on unmarried women's pregnancy and childbirth through sperm donation, there's only ethical guidelines from medical groups.
Right. Although there's a lack of actually legal restriction, I think still the fact that they are recommending otherwise.
Yes.
I think it still speaks volume of the current state of how people still see, they link childbirth to marriage. But I feel like what media talks about when it comes to low birth rate in South Korea, which is it's the lowest in the world. They always usually talk about the career problem for women after marriage or childbirth, paternity leave or gender gender conflict or wage related issues like glass ceiling, but there are these problems. But it's not like these problems newly emerged. It always existed in Korea.
Always been in place.
Right, but still data shows that there is a spike in low birth rate and increasing unlikelihood for a lot of people to not get married. Maybe there's a lot like other variables as well, right? And maybe it's just that people just live longer as well. They just consider things a little bit later in their lives.
Yeah,
maybe.
that's also true.
Yeah, which is, I feel that because in my mind I'm still in my 20s sort of.
Yeah.
Because I don't feel like I have to have children right away.
Yeah, same.
I still feel like I have a lot of time, and a lot of my friends feel that way. Like in the past, people used to get really early married and like get jobs when they're just early 20s. That's not happening these days.
It's
Absolutely not. Cultures change.
Right, culture changed and just people's like pace of life sort of changed. So maybe the egg freezing issue is partly an evidence to that, because it's maybe people are just not necessarily attaching marriage issues to immediate childbirth. Maybe they want to get married after mid-30s, but they still want to retain the option. Not that people, like women, do not want children anymore. I think that's a lot, like distorted a lot of times in South Korean media. And lastly, if any government officials are listening to this generation that has a largely different concept of marriage and childbirth, what can the government do aside from egg freezing support?
Well, helping women with mental repercussions is something that I think always comes up. Women, as I said before, the problems that women face in South Korean society right now are paramount. You've just mentioned that there's a glass ceiling still to break. There is a gender pay gap that is currently still ongoing in vast majority of cases. So I think that the government's promotion of egg freezing should also have measures for helping women with mental repercussions and physical repercussions as well.
Yeah.
Preach.
I think the government could definitely create more awareness on accepting different types of families and amend the law to accept them and cater to their needs. It's not that younger generations are against like marriage or childbirth, but there's so many implications in life that would not make their life easier. So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's more like if we can get married, sure, I can get. If we have children, sure. But it's not like it's an easy choice to make.
Absolutely
so,
not.
retaining option and creating legal amendments would be very helpful. And we hope there are more systematic support in the future. And for more information, read Hyojin's story. And if you have any ideas to further recommend to South Korean government, please leave a review to our podcast.
Yes, please do.
Yes, please.
Unlock the full Korea Pro experience by joining our community. Stay informed, stay ahead, and never miss a beat on Korean affairs that matter. Subscribe today and transform the way you understand Korea.
All right, let's move on to the week ahead segment. It seems that the South Korean president was planning to go to Denmark and Germany, but it was postponed, it seems, for some reason. And what was this thing about the Japan summit? Was it confirmed?
No, it wasn't.
Right, but there was a Japanese media reporting on this possibility. But if you all remember, there was a whole fiasco about who announces it first before, right? So maybe that's what's going on. But we do not have confirmation about this. The most important thing to look for next week is John and Junha will be going to a press conference to see Lee Jun-seok.
Yes, that's correct.
Wow.
So it will be at the press center, yes.
Right. If you have any questions you want Junha to ask Lee Jun-seok, please leave a review. Thank you.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in.
If you want to know more, sign up for our daily executive briefings. We brief you on all you need to know from the past 24 hours and why they matter every morning in your inboxes.
Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for your weekly dose of insight. And until next time, I'm Jeongmin Kim.
And I'm John Lee. Stay connected, stay informed, and we'll see you next time on the Korea Pro Podcast.